Joining us this evening is an expert on tackling workplace challenges faced by women. Her name is Jennifer Reynolds. She is the president and CEO of Women in Capital Markets. Welcome to What She Said, Jennifer.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
What are the key themes, in your view, for 2017 for women in Canada, and especially now with Trump in office and women feeling they must, I guess, in some sense, protect the gains that they've made?
We absolutely do have to protect the gains. And I think what we need to strive for in 2017 and really think about is how are we going to get more women into leadership roles? You know, young women have been graduating from university. We've been greater than half the university graduates now for 25 years.
Really?
Yes, we have. And we're 62% of university graduates today. We're abundantly present in middle management. And yet, if you look at the top in the executive suite, there's only about 18% of those roles held by women. Only 12% of board seats in Canada are held by women. So we need to make strides here. We really have been at a standstill. We haven't made progress in the last couple of decades, and so we all need to recognize that and make sure we all have a voice in our economy and in our political sphere as well.
What can we do?
Well, I think if you're in the workplace, you need to get involved in different initiatives, support other women, get involved in things your company may be doing, and have a voice politically as well. There's lots of groups and organizations like Women in Capital Markets you can join, and you can join a movement. You need to be active politically as well. I'd love to see more women in politics. Let's support women who are out there and who are having a voice and trying to drive change.
Now, you believe that it is critical for the Canadian economy, for corporate Canada, to embrace gender diversity at the senior leadership role. Why is it critical to the economy?
That's an excellent question, because often people jump to the conclusion, well, it's social justice, and it's not social justice at all. There has been study after study after study which has shown if you have better gender diversity in your leadership teams, your company is actually more profitable. You have better shareholder returns. So there's a business case here, and that's why if you're the CEO of a company or a business owner, you should care about this, because there's proof that your company is going to do better. It's about diversity of thought, of course, getting different ideas out there. So we need to focus on that because it's going to create stronger companies, and it's going to create a stronger economy in Canada. And fortunately, we have seen the regulators and the government starting to step up and say, we recognize in Canada we're not doing a good job on this. We're falling behind. We're not using our talent pool well. So that's the good news. The bad news is we are very far behind other countries in the world right now in terms of our representation of women on boards and in leadership. In fact, there was a study done by EY and the Peterson International Institute for Economics that looked at gender diversity in corporate leadership around the world in 92 countries. Canada was in the bottom 10. I think as a Canadian, that shocks me.
That's so surprising.
Yes.
Like, would you expect that?
No. Who's at the top?
There's countries, many different countries you wouldn't expect. Iceland, in terms of the wage gap, does very well. Scandinavian countries have been very progressive, have pushed forward initiatives to get women on boards. They have much better parental leave policies. I'm a firm believer that we need to start talking about not maternity leave, but parental leave. We need men to be able to take on those roles and take parental leave without a stigma. Because I do feel for men.
That stigma is still there. I mean, several
Absolutely.
of our former colleagues at CTV took parental leave, and it was frowned upon. It was joked about. And I don't know how we lose that stigma. I mean, tackling the baby issue seems to be a huge hurdle.
It's huge. And the barrier is exactly that. I think once men can take parental leave and not have that stigma, then the stigma goes away for women. So we need to think about that socially. We need to think about that as businesses. If you, again, are a senior leader in a business, take a stand. Take a paternity leave. That sends a great message.
But also, the women that we've talked to say they take the leave and then they're bumped way down the ladder in terms of promotion. And so it's not just sort of the stigma of being a wuss. It's the stigma of I'm giving up the next 5 promotions.
That's exactly what it is for both men and women. And that's what happens too often to women. That's why we get stuck, whether you want to call it the sticky floor of middle management or the glass ceiling. I think it's more you're stuck there because people have assumed that if you took those maternity leaves, that you aren't all in on your career and that family is always first and your career is always second. And I firmly disagree with that. I think that women can be phenomenal in the career sphere and be phenomenal at home too. And we have to start recognizing that as business leaders, that we can't associate parenting with a lack of commitment to career.
The other thing you talk about is you say that the Canadian economy can't continue to waste female talent languishing at home. What is the barrier to that talent going into the workplace?
Well, I think the barrier, particularly in the corporate world, is we see, I mean, women are working, let's face it. 73% of mothers with children under the age of 16 are working. And women's labor participation rates are actually very high in Canada. But we're not in the high-paying jobs. We're not in the leadership roles. And so that has an impact on our families. That means our families are less wealthy. We're working, but we're working for less money. And so, we have to fix that problem. We have to make sure that in the corporate world, we're creating environments where women can rise into senior leadership roles too, along with men. And right now, it's not there. And there are some things around children and flexibility, but flexibility keeps a woman in the workforce, but it doesn't necessarily put her on the track for leadership, as we're seeing. So we have to have this buy-in to just because she's a mother doesn't mean she's not a good professional or a leader, and make sure that we are fostering and sponsoring these women in their careers to move forward.
You mentioned Iceland. Now, I can't remember the exact year. I think it was 1979, maybe. All the women walked off the job. They walked out of their homes. They just down tools. That's it. Yeah. And that was when it was on strike. That was when things changed there. Mm-hmm. And they started to realize that the country couldn't move without the women, and they needed to support the women. But how do we convince corporate Canada here that they need to embrace this, and how do they embrace it?
Yeah, excellent point on Iceland. They did this last year, too, in a couple of European countries. Women all left the office at whatever time it was, 2:30 or 3:30, wherever the implied time was, where they weren't getting paid anymore because of the gender wage gap. It would imply they were working for free for the rest of the day. They also went home and they refused to do any housework or take care of their children. So they put all the work to their husbands. So a great statement. I thought it was fantastic. And a few other countries followed suit. But what we need to see, and what we're seeing from some of the more progressive companies today, is really thinking about this intentionally. Tone from the top. Number one, it's the leader in the company that needs to say, we are going to have better gender diversity because I believe in the business case. I think we're going to have more innovative thinking. I think we need women's opinions in our business leadership. And then driving that message down. And that's the harder thing, is it's changing culture. Because it's not just your work culture, it's social culture too. Women should take care of the kids. Men can't take care of the kids. All those stigmas we were talking about. Mm-hmm. You have to convince everyone. And to convince people, you have to make it part of their performance evaluation to say, do you have diversity below you, ethnic diversity, gender diversity, or do you constantly promote your own likeness? Because everyone gravitates towards people like themselves, right? Same like same. And that's what happens in the workforce. So if the top is generally white men, then they tend to build bonds and feel more comfortable with white men as well. And so it's sort of a self-fulfilled prophecy, right? They tend to and mentor those people, sponsor those people, get those people on good projects, and then when it's promotion time, get them promoted. So we need to say to leaders, you've got to make sure when you come forward every year with your people for promotion that there's diversity there, and hold them accountable.
We're talking theories, but for people listening at home, give us a quick example, because we don't have much time, of a beacon of a company that did something and had success.
I think we have seen the Canadian banks make some real progress on this. They've been very focused on this. If you look at, two or three of them have, in terms of their representation of senior leadership, about 40% of their senior executives now are women. So they've worked very hard at this. They have very formal talent management practices there, and it's toned from the top. They've said, we're going to make progress on this. Diversity matters to us. So we do have some companies doing good things. We've seen some of the audit firms as well do a good job on this front. So there are really progressive firms out there in Canada. We just don't have enough of them.
So how is Women in Capital Markets going to help?
Well, we work with the banks, of course, and keep pushing. And certainly in the capital markets, the numbers tend to be not as good as the other side of the bank, the retail side of the bank that everyone sees regularly. But we work with all those, the pension funds, the smaller firms, those who aren't as far up the curve, to let them know, here's the best practices, here's what you should be doing, and also to provide programs for their women so they feel supported. So we're trying to broaden our word, just get the word out, encourage companies to take action on this. And the good news is we're getting calls now. They're calling us to say, hey, what should I be doing?
It's fascinating information. And I mean, I believe in the Women's March, we saw a sign saying, I can't believe we're still marching for this stuff.
So true.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer Reynolds.
Delighted to be here.
This is What She Said. Stay with us.